Okay, in this little video, what I'm going to try to show is a way to replace any of the badges on your motorcycle, but with some custom badges. But in this case, it's going to be the ones that came on the DG pipes that we put on the RD recently. Now, what comes with the pipes, of course, and it comes with many commercial parts, is this like little piece that has their logo stamped in. Well, you know, I'm not big on advertising for somebody that didn't give me something for free, so we're going to just eliminate that and put our own logo there. Now, of course, if you like this or you like the look of the DG sponsored you, well, they didn't sponsor me, so I'm not sponsoring them. It's as simple as that. No more complicated than that, I guess. Anyway, the first thing is using some of these little sanding grit pieces in our Dremel tool. I need to grind off these little steel rivets that put the parts on. Relatively straightforward job. And what I wanted to show is now on my R1, actually on all of the bikes except the SV650, the Kawasaki 650, I've had custom badging done. Now in this case I made the mufflers from scratch, so obviously no badges came with them, and I had to make the brackets and the tubes and everything. And we had put out a video on that a long time ago, I think in '09, but I don't really remember. But now, to lay out these badges, I've had several people help me. John Pothier, the #1, and a guy named Cena from New York City, a modeler. He helped me lay out the graphics. Then from that graphic, once I'm happy with the graphic, I go to a place locally, and there's probably one in every town that makes trophies. And in our case, it's in Hasbrouck Prestige Trophy, and Jean is the person to see. And she takes the file, the computer file, and turns it into this. It's aluminum or brass or steel, depending. There's all kind of choices of material. In this case, we went with brass with black lettering. And in the case of the RD, or in some of the ones like on the Ferrari bikes, we had them done in black with gold lettering. And of course, there's a million choices of material. When you go down to a trophy shop, you can pretty much pick the ones you want. This is all done with a laser, and it's very, very detailed and very nice. I used to put the badges on the bikes, and now what I do is I have decals that John Pothier laid out that I put under the clear. The reason is these stick out from the paint, and the other ones just lay down. But again, if DG were sponsoring me, I'd leave their logo on. Since they're not sponsoring me, and to me this isn't a particularly attractive logo. Well, and again, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. So anyway, step one is to get the old badges off. And once you grind the rivets, of course, the screwdriver pops them right off. Then there's well, again, I don't know what you could use these for, maybe for something, but I don't know what. And you have these little rivets sticking out, which you have to grind flush. Again, nothing here high-tech, just a little bit of labor of love. Then in my case, I know that because I'm going to JB weld on the new badges, I'm not going to use rivets. So it makes for a nice cleaner look. What I do is I scuff up the part of the pipe where the JB weld is going to go. And I was looking at these and I was just thinking, you know, as an alternative, I could have painted in here yellow or maybe black and yellow or something. But again, I like having my own stuff. And since this is a hobby, a lifelong hobby, doing these restorations and doing custom bikes now since the early 70s, I wanted to have something. Now, what happens is with these badges, and again, John Pothier laid this particular one out, did the artwork. Once you have this file and you go down to the trophy store, you have them repeated as many times because you have to buy a sheet. Just like when you do a granite countertop, you have to buy a sheet of granite. So what happens is, and I've used some of these already, obviously, but you always have ones left over. Now, this material typically cuts. There's two types of the material. This is the thicker of the material. The gold material that has black lettering, when they do the laser work, it's easier to bend it. this is the thicker of the two materials, and can be difficult to bend. Now, what happens is, you can see when you cut this with a scissor, it leaves kind of a not really nice edge. And what I do is I cut the big piece off first, and then I trim it little by little by little until it's about 1/8 of an inch, and then do the final little bit on the grindstone or on a belt sander, but not with a scissor, because I want to radius that edge off. And if that edge is sharp, it's not going to be as nice as if it had a little radius to it. So once I'm happy with the shape and I'm happy with the amount of, I call it a frame, that goes around here. Now what happens, because it's been ground off, this edge is silver, I don't want it silver. So the choice would be, I could take some black paint, which I've done in the past. That's worked fine. Once I get the final edge on both of them, what I found works just as well to get that edge black where it grinds down to where it's shiny. What really does work well is a Sharpie laundry marker. Now here, these are relatively smooth in the back, and before, you know, JB Weld would stick, but I like to stack the deck. And anything JB Weld, if you just roughen it up with a grindstone, a piece of sandpaper, anything, this material you don't want to get hot when you grind it or do any of these things, because it's a delicate surface. That black that's on the brass is a delicate surface until you clear coat it. Now it's made to be kind of on a trophy or an award or something, and you wouldn't need clear coat on that. But in our case, we want the protection from riding around and having stones hit it and guys rub up against it with their nose and everything. And you see the edge of this is silver still. So until I put the bend in it. Now putting that bend in, you might think, well, that's pretty easy. You know, you could take a pipe that size, or, well, it's not as easy as you think it is, because this material wants to kink. It's very soft material. So what I do is I bend it one little piece at a time, and I keep looking for things with a smaller and smaller diameter. And here it is on the fork leg of the GS, which turned out to be a perfect diameter for the final bends. And then right at the very end, you need to get it to really bend, and that can really be tricky. And see what happens, it wants to bend in the middle, but not up here. So there's a trick for that too, and it's, you go back to the fork leg, and you can hold a little piece of wood. I have a little piece of 2x4. Hold this down and then just bend it around the fork leg both ways. And that gets that last little piece of bend in it. So in essence, it's very close to the diameter of the pipe. And this is something I keep in the shop all the time. It's Sharpie and they're laundry markers. Now, Sharpie markers work just as well. Laundry markers have a little advantage when you're doing paintwork. It doesn't come off. This is a permanent ink instead of a temporary ink that you could wash off with water. Supposedly this is some kind of totally different formula. Sometimes I wonder if they just didn't put it in the same pen and charge you $1 more, and it's really the same. But I don't know, I'm not in the pen business. But anyway, getting that real edge right around the corner, it's a little detail touch, and that whole edge, once it's blackened up with that Sharpie laundry marker, now the next little challenge is you have to have some way of holding this. It'd really be difficult. You'd spray paint more on your hand than anything. So what I did is I just took a stick of balsa wood, took some duct tape, made little loops of duct tape that hold it from the back. They'll also keep any clear that we're going to put on here, urethane clear, from getting underneath this. So once they're mounted up there, and I know we're real close to having the right bend in them, and I wouldn't want to do the bend after. I'd want to do it ahead of time. Now, Glenn has just bought a brand new coat of clear that we did his Ducati parts with, and of course he's graciously sharing it with other people in the shop here. So we're going to use some brand new clear. Go out. It was 14 degrees this day. I remember how cold it was, and it had just snowed. I don't even have the sidewalk shoveled yet, but I wanted to get some clear on that, get it out in the garage drying. Now what I do is I try to get that first coat of clear on there because I know I'm going to sand it, but just get as thick a coat as I can. Because I really want it to wrap around that edge and make for a nice, like a radiused edge. And as the clear, if you hit it from all sides, you can really get it to look very professional with a very little amount of work. So once that dries overnight, now we go into the next day, of course, and take some wet and dry sandpaper. This is 600. Get it scuffed up, because just like anything, it's best to have 3 or 4 coats, but sanded between coats. And each time you sand it, the clear, it'll just make it that much deeper and that much nicer and more professional looking. And actually, since these are my little calling cards for the motorcycle, and I have a couple other ideas, I want John Pothier eventually to lay one out with a Ferrari logo that I can put on the red bike where it has the Yoshimura exhaust. I want to get rid of that. That's a little blasé, and put something up there that we always have fun trying to convince people they're real Ferraris. So, but anyway, these logos, and I try to take it under different light because they're so reflective. But John did such a nice job of laying this out, and he's been helping Joe lay out decals now, and it may be that he's even going to help, we don't know yet. One of our friends, Art, is laying out some helmet Animal Precision logos. So anyway, the next thing is the JB Weld stuff. In the shop, we always have several tubes of JB Weld. It mixes up 1 to 1. It's a good idea to just warm it just a tad. If you see bubbles in it, you've gone too far. Now, by warming it up, what happens is it spreads out easier and becomes more capillary and gets in those little nooks and crannies that are in the badges and in the scratches we put on the pipes. And so here's one that's all laid out. Now, I wanted to pass on a tip that I found anytime I put badges on. Leave the last 1/4 inch a picture frame with no JB Weld. The reason is these are not going to come off unless somebody, I don't know what would happen, somebody takes a bite out of the motorcycle or something. But what happens is now if this JB Weld doesn't ooze out the end, like when you put too much peanut butter on a sandwich and squeeze the bread and it all comes out the end, but we just need a relatively small amount. And what we'll do, since it's still freezing cold out there, I had a great way to preheat the pipes. Just run the motorcycle. And then I thought, nah, I'm going to be in the garage, and it's going to be, because it's a 2-stroke, it's going to be all smoky. I just took the hairdryer and heated the pipe till it was warm to the touch. Got the pieces down near the position where I really thought they would look attractive. And you don't really see it here. These pipes are black, but what's nice is you get a nice contrast there. High gloss and then a flat dull with the barbecue paint that the DG pipes come. Now the beautiful part about having something custom like this is whenever the motorcycle guys get together, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of other groups, it's having these unique little things on a motorcycle that set it apart in a crowd. Now if you have 10 Ducatis sitting in a row and they all have Termignoli exhausts and they're all red, and one guy comes around with a black one, guess whose bike they're going to go wandering over to? Now, and that's not the be-all end-all, but the same thing with anything that sticks out in a crowd, which I guess almost everybody that rides a motorcycle would like that to happen. And whether it's custom parts, custom features, in my case, the thing I enjoy is having custom things that I've made or I've done that I've not bought in a store. And I call that built, not bought. So once we get these on here and the tape, and let me go back to that picture, because when I warm this up, these might tend to slide down. So I let it dry for about an hour with the blue tape on that. And I wanted to do some pictures with the new badges on. Now, again, these are the things John laid out this Yamaha, which I gave. They're on Ray's Yamaha now, and I think Luciano put them on both of the Yamahas. So we've used about a dozen of these Yamaha guys. The little Yamaha logos that come on a tank, and I'm mentioning this from Malcolm, these come from a guy in Hong Kong, and he's very reliable. It takes about 3 weeks to get them, so it's good to order them ahead of time. The Kenny Roberts replica logos and the West Cooley logos on the Suzuki were laid out by John Pothier, and he's been helping Joe with some of the technology which we used on Joe's Agostini helmet. Some of these things that I made, this little badge which is similar to this except a different size. And then on our calipers, what I had is these calipers, I just wanted to dress them up. And the little badges that came from Yamaha were not available. I couldn't find them anywhere on the internet. And I noticed I had some left over from the R1. We made about 10 different custom badges for the R1, including the little Ferrari stickers and little different things that John was real helpful with. So now when you look at this, and it's got a lot of little custom touches, and of course the seat that we made on YouTube, the whole seat is made on YouTube. And the custom things like the shocks and the, well, whatever, I'm not sure. Painting the wheels is on YouTube too, I think. The Renthal bars, which worked out to be perfect. The little mirrors that we got off Amazon. See, now what's nice about this particular bike is it looks like a pretty custom bike, and yet it still has the flavor of the RDs. It doesn't have a log for a seat or a keg of beer for a gas tank or something that makes it crazy. Still a functional, very comfortable, by the way, a very practical motorcycle. Still gets 120 miles to a tank of gas. So for a lot of reasons, that's why I enjoy this restoration in particular, as well as most of the other ones. I just thought this was one that really captivated me, and because my wife bought me the donor bike on Valentine's Day 2 years ago, it has kind of a special meaning to me. She really didn't volunteer to buy it. I kind of helped her volunteer. That's the truth too. Now, I know Luciano hates these yellow springs, but you know what? Luciano, we respect your Ducatis with the, what color the springs are on Ducatis, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. It's all in the eye of the beholder. And as I say to everybody, no matter what kind of bike you ride, whether you like 2 strokes, 4 strokes, you like fast bikes, touring bikes, adventure bikes, doesn't matter, Harleys, whatever. It's just the camaraderie of hanging out with a bunch of guys where all the bikes are different. Some of them are a little more different than others. Some guys spend a ton of money and don't do anything. Some people do a lot of work and don't spend any money, and I guess that's the part I fit into. I don't know. Anyway, another thing too that we want to mention to people, that I had spent more hours than I'm willing to admit polishing engine parts. I wanted this engine to be the focal point of the bike, and it's hard to imagine how many hours I spent polishing parts, taking a motor apart and pulling the clutch covers off and everything. But it's mostly work and not much money. And so a bike like this has a lot of meaning to me. I have a lot of pride in it and a lot of enjoyment. And when one of my friends who's never ridden an RD takes a ride on it, usually it adds to the fun of their motorcycling career. And I think that little badge, as small of an item as it may seem small. It's really not that small, because it all starts to add up. And this restoration is for sure a work in progress. We're definitely not done with it yet. There's way more things to do. I want to get the electronic ignition. And I, as I have time and money, of course, available, and thank you to Malcolm, we now have DG pipes. Thanks to Ray, we have several other parts, the donor seat that we made into that seat, and this is the best part of all. And it's hard to imagine, if you've never ridden a 2-stroke, how much fun it is to ride this thing.